Foils and Ghouls. So a while back, you guys might have remembered I went through a sketchbook called Matt Draws. This thing absolutely melted my melon. I had a couple of people tell me to check out Matt's work online, and I wandered across a little series called Faceless in the Family. And Faceless pretty well describes the what was left of my head when I got done reading that thing. It is absolutely incredible. The art is something that I don't think I've seen in a really long time as far as originality. Story was really, really cool, and I'm super excited to have Matt onto the channel tonight. So without further ado, let's just hop on into it. How are you doing tonight?
Doing pretty good. How are you?
I've had a bit of a crazy day, as I'm sure you're aware,
Yeah.
man. But I'm just excited to be here talking to you, getting the word out, man. Dude, when I came across your stuff, I was totally blown away, and I haven't gotten a chance to check out enough of your back catalog at this point. I'm really looking forward to diving into it. But the big reason I wanted to have you on is because Faceless in the Family is coming up at the beginning of November, I think, through Oni. So I wanted to make sure everybody got a chance to get in on that book from issue one because they're gonna want to if they missed out on the Zoop campaign. But before we get into all of that, let's just talk a little bit. How did you get into comic books? You have a very unique style, and I'm interested where you come from and how you're coming at comics.
I wasn't really introduced to comics. They were always around. My dad had a collection, so they were just a part of life. Uh, and so they were always just kind of there, just like cartoons or toys or other kid things. And so I don't remember getting into them. They were always there, and I've always been a fan. Um, and then to give like cliff notes of how I got here, basically, I was always a kid who drew like I think most kids do. But then I want to say probably kindergarten, I found out I was a little better than average because we were all drawing, and a lot of the other kids they were looking at my drawing and they were like, "Whoa, he's look what he did," and I didn't know there was anything different about it. So from then on, that kind of like that was my origin story, and it kind of like, oh, that I'm good at this, okay. And so that mixed with I love doing it and I'm a fan of comics, I'm a fan of cartoons. It was just I didn't really have a choice. So pretty much all through high school, well really all of school, I was the kid who drew. I wasn't taking notes in math class. I was taking suggestions from the kids around me, like, oh, draw Bigfoot, draw him with a robot arm, draw him with a cigar in his mouth, draw him with a machete. And every day I do a new wacky character like that. And but at that point, I didn't like I had a few different ideas what I do with art as a career. It was almost I didn't even choose like, yes, I'm gonna be drawing for a living. Like it's gonna happen. I'm gonna just I don't know how that works. I don't know how I'm going to get there. I don't know how the logistics of any of that, but this is my one ticket to make something happen other than just working at Lowe's, which which I did for years and amongst other things. But um so yeah, it wasn't until a year or two after high school I all I knew comics to be were, you know, the classic. There's a writer, there's an artist, there's a penciler, an inker, a colorist, letterer, blah blah blah. I'll be a penciler. So I tried what I could to send out submissions, like little 5-page sample made up stories, and for the most part, I just got nothing but no's. I got a couple of, yeah, you're not there yet, kid, but keep going. So I did that for at least, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. And then in between waiting, just waiting for something to happen, I would be just working on getting better at drawing itself. Like it still didn't click storytelling. Like I didn't understand that element, which is like the glue that puts it all together. And which was a lot of the feedback I'd be getting. They'd say like, yeah, you got to work on your storytelling. You got to, or anytime I look up like YouTube videos, like how to break into comics, how to become a comic book artist, how to, that was a theme that would run through all of them. So along the way, um, like I said, that just never, that was not working out. That wasn't getting me anywhere. So then it evolved to, how about I try writing for myself? Because also when I was a kid, I would write my own stories. Um, a few comics here and there, but it was mainly just little short stories I wrote in like journals, like made up things, like, just made up stories with characters I invented. And so I had a little experience. So it wasn't a completely new thing. So I'm like, what if I just combine those two? And one of the, I can't remember if it was the first thing, but one of the first things I did, I just did 3 pages. And I set a small goal for myself in that way, like just try 3 pages. So it's nothing big. I did the 3 pages, and then through that I said to myself, oh wait, there's more to this story. So then it turned into a one shot. All of a sudden I've got a full issue. So then I self-published that, and I would be like, I did my first convention. I printed up some copies of that, brought it, and and then from there it just kind of snowballed. Like then I did another one shot. Then I did, and with each one I could tell everything was improving just through doing it. And each one I would do, I would keep submitting. Like, all right, the trying to be a penciler thing, I pivoted. Now let me just try to just do comics. And so I repeated that process until I got to the Freak. And that was the first one that actually got attention on it. And it ended up being published. It ended up being Eisner nominated. Like that blew me away. Like I never, because I went from nothing all the way to that. From the book before that to that one, it was a complete shift. But it was also, before doing that one, it was a mindset shift that I remember clearly. Like this one is gonna, I don't give a fuck. Censor that out if you need to, but this is being noticed. I'm done being denied. I'm done grinding away at this for years and nothing happening. This one is going to be the one. And it did. It shockingly, that worked. Something clicked in my mind. It was a combination of that, the story idea, the right place, right time. I don't know what it was, but from then on, it kept going. So that's my story. It might be a little longer than I wanted it to be, but
No,
that's how I got here.
that's a wonderful setup because I was going to say when I was doing research, the Freak was basically the first thing that I could find any concrete details on.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say like mythological status, but when I'm looking it up and reading about it, it's discussed very loftily because for a lot of people, it felt like that just kind of came out of left field. They'd never heard your name before, they hadn't seen your books before. Like you said, you got some big nominations on that book. There were eyes on that, a lot of eyes on that book, and
Yeah.
a lot of people talking about it. You said, you just kind of like took the dive, self-published some stuff. How many how many one shots did you put out, and when did that start?
That was 2015 was the very first, like, I'm doing this on my own. I'm just going to write for myself. Because also, I forgot to mention, before that, in the penciling attempt, I would also find other writers trying to break in, who were also, they were trying the same thing I was, but just from a different angle. And we would do submissions as well. So I did a number of those that never. So to a lot of people, I did come from out of nowhere, and they just thought, like, must be nice. It's like, well, hang on, I've been grinding away at this for years, doing multiple things that failed. I get no response,
I,
or
looking at the art, it just didn't feel like it came out of left field. It seemed like very contemplative in a lot of aspects. So I'm curious, How was the few years that you spent independently publishing and struggling while doing those? Was there a certain thing? You just said fuck it at a certain point,
Yeah.
obviously. Like, I'm going to do me. Was there like a book that pushed you to that point where you were trying to do something that you weren't? Or is that just always something that you've kind of subconsciously been working towards?
You mean when I decided to do right for myself,
Yeah,
or
just you. I mean, I know you
oh
said that it was kind of like out of like I'm not doing this for anybody else anymore, but I didn't know if it was like some people are working on a book and you're trying to get those submissions in and you're like eventually you're like fuck it, I'm doing an X-Men book. It's
yeah,
it's it's called X People and
yeah.
here you go. And they just get burnt, man. And they'll either leave the industry or
Hmm.
it forces them to creative crossroads. So I was just
Yeah.
curious.
No, there really wasn't. It might have just been enough failures that I feel like it's either going to push you, like you said, it's either going to make you quit or it's going to make you even stronger. As cliche as that might be, it's true. It's like it's either going to you're not going to have anything left in the tank and you're just going to gas out, or you're going to get so fed up that something's going to change. You're going to just like there were multiple changes. It was, I did the shift to writing for myself. That was a big shift. Then that still wasn't, there were signs of, there were little breadcrumbs of this is the right path, but there was still no, I'd submit those things and not a single publisher would want it. Or, I might go to a convention and sell 20 copies and think that was like, that was, that was a success. That was the height of at that time, like, hey, all right, this is something. And then, but if I was honest with myself, this isn't what I'm wanting. This isn't all that I'm wanting. So eventually I hit another point where it's like, all right, something's got to give here, or else I guess I'm just out. Like it's one or the other. So if the freak didn't work out, who knows? That might have been the end. I don't know, but
So
and it was turned on by everyone but Ad House. Like it was the same thing again. All it took was one, but hey,
Ad House is who saved Matthew Allison. Everybody else turned down Cancor, so obviously Ad House has
yeah,
got some taste. I mean,
for
they've got
sure.
you, they've got Cancor, and you guys are two of the most bitingly original visual storytellers. Not just like pinups. Look, I can draw cool shit.
Yeah,
There's storytelling going. There's a substance with your work. And that brings me to another question that I'm very curious about because I wasn't able to read those independent one shot. I didn't even know that you had several that came out before the Freak. I heard allusions to them, but I never found any of them. And I'm curious, visual wise, you're very unique. I don't want to keep harping on that word because it sounds like you're calling someone weird, but I don't see art that grabs me and just says Matt Lesniewski to me. Like I normally I see something I'm like, oh, there's shades of like George Perez and Alex Toth and did it. With your stuff, I can see spices of other stuff, but it is really interesting. Was the visual counterpart to your art evolving really heavily as well while you were doing that independent stuff, or was it just the storytelling, which I assume had to be exponentially building on itself while you were forcing yourself to work like that?
yeah. It was even through one issue, uh, it would, which would somewhat worry me, because another thing you hear all the time is you got to have consistency. The characters need to look. You need to be able to recognize from page to page what character is what. And but yeah, it would, even if you take the whole book itself and you look at the freak on the first page or the first few pages and look at him at the end, he's morphed to like this scarecrow, like exaggerated guy. But not only that, from book to book, there's pretty drastic changes, and part of that is just time is passing, and I'm consistently trying to get better. So whether it actually is getting better or not, changes are being made. And I also take longer on everything I'm doing. So even more time is passing. And it's not only that, I get bored really easily doing the same thing. So I'm kind of forcing myself to try different things. And like a lot of artists, they kind of find their style and then they just do that over and over again, with nothing nothing wrong with that at all, but I can't do that. It just like I want to have fun with it. I want to try different things. I want to, so that's part of it too. It just naturally is constantly changing. So
You seem
I don't
like a
know.
shark, man. You got to constantly be moving and evolving is kind of the feeling that I'm getting, always heading towards that that fresh water. So who are you visually, who are you drawing from? I feel like I see certain things in there, like Michelle Fife. I see some really interesting line work coming from like maybe some Eastern European places, but your stuff is not something where I can be like, oh yeah, he grew up on the East Coast or '90s image. Where are you drawing from, Matt?
I mean, so many, so many artists, but it's really like a blend of, you know, like I have an appreciation for so many different artists, but early on it was like um, Todd McFarlane, Kelly Jones, uh, um, Wrightson, um, who else? Greg Capullo, um, Sam Keith. Um, like I really like exaggerated stuff like that, but the shading and that sort of stuff I didn't get into late until later because I just didn't know how to do it. And I knew this is going to make my stuff look bad. So I just completely, let's not do it. And earlier animation all has no shading in it. All it is colored in. It's just open line. And that was a big part of what influenced my stuff. Like think of any cartoon before, I don't know, 2005. It's all someone sat down and drew it. So I always looked at that. Even as a kid, I would never do shading. I would always just kind of do the line work. And so that it wasn't until the past 5 years or so that I delved into that. And now I'm fully in the swamp. But that's a newer thing for me. But like other artists, Chris Stevens, I don't know if you know him. He's one of my favorites. James Stokoe, he's got the just crazy, he just fills the page with madness and detail and energy, and I like his stuff. Who else? I mean, you name them, I'm probably there's something about it. I'm like, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, that's good. Like it's all. I feel like you don't know fully what's going in your stuff. Like,
I don't think you're ever fully conscious of it unless someone's always constantly bugging you about it. You're too conscious of it yourself and you know that you're subconsciously pulling from someone. But when you're talking about guys like Sam Keith, Bernie Wrightson, all of these guys, the one thing that's in my head is that Frazetta ability to build a very realistic, for lack of a better term, very realistic body form underneath these very, very exaggerated lines that surround the form. And that is very, very evident in your work. And it makes a lot of sense. I was just, like when I came across your work, it was mostly for Faceless and the Family, which is Matt's latest project, and we're going to get there and we're going to talk about that. And the stuff that he's talking about bringing into his work is, and for anybody who hasn't done it, also I do right now would love to take an opportunity, check out Matt's YouTube channel. If you're interested in process or watching someone work, there's some really amazing videos of Matt laying out how he achieves what he does on the paper. And he uses a lot of stipple or dot shading. People call it dot shading, but stippling, and some absolutely wonderful figure work. So I highly recommend you guys check that out on his YouTube. That's why I keep harping on Matt about his input or his influences and stuff. So you're drawing from a ton of different places. I know you said you grew up around like a collection, and your parents, it was kind of always an omnipresent thing for you in your house. Are your parents did they push you towards books, or was that kind of a thing that you did on your own, just out of curiosity as a parent myself?
I wouldn't say they pushed me.
I don't mean push, but like encourage. Some people's parents are
Oh yeah,
like
yeah.
comics, oh sweet Jesus, even people who read comics.
They didn't deter me. I would say that there was no level of like, no, 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 don't put that away. That's silly, or that's whatever people say. There was none of that. So that's definitely, if there was some of that, I wouldn't have gotten to this point probably. So, but like I said, it was just always around, and drawing and art and creativity, that was always encouraged. That was always like, that's a positive, productive thing. Nothing wrong with that at all. If it's comics, if it's, any other nerdy thing I was into, Yu-Gi-Oh cards, like it, just do it. Like, so,
So
and
no, go ahead, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and even in school, like other kids, they would tell me like, if you don't do something with this, like you're an idiot. Like you have to, I don't care what it is, but you need to use this skill that you have. And, because you always hear the story of the opposite, which is, don't do that. You got to go to school. You got to, you know, you need to find a real job. You need to, I mean, there were little moments of that here and there, don't get me wrong, but overall, I got more encouragement than anything. Luckily, I feel like I'm lucky in that way, because I could have easily been turned away and felt bad about it, or like, this isn't, because it's hard enough trying to make this happen, or trying to make stuff in general. So if you're also getting tons of feedback like, why are you doing that, or that's silly, or, and again, like I said, there was some of that, but it was 10% of versus the 90, which was some form of positivity.
Well,
So
I mean, you followed through. You listened to all your classmates and everybody. You put that talent to good use. Between you said what 2015 and like Freak came out in what 2018, 2019, right around there, correct?
19, it finally came out, but I was working on it 18.
Okay. And so
And
that's only 4 years. I mean, I'd say you put it to pretty good use because when the Freak came out, I would say stuff pretty dramatically changed for you overnight.
yeah,
Can you
well,
talk a little bit about that book hitting, man? It's got to be just a surreal experience. I mean, you spent like 3 or 4 years really grinding, putting yourself, I would imagine, I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but really putting yourself into these one shots you're doing. Stuff's maybe just not, you're throwing pasta at the wall and stuff's not hitting. And then you finally hit a book where you're like, fuck it, I'm going to be me. I'm going to be Matt, no one else, nothing else. And that book, it got nominations. I still hear people talk about it like 4 years later. I'm just curious what that was like. That could be very overwhelming.
yeah, it, I mean, I still don't really know if it's real, but I mean, because even to this day, people will say, I read that thing was great. Uh, like, because you go from, like you said, you go from no one really noticing to that. It's a complete shift. And it was longer than that. The 2015, that's when I started doing my own stuff. But there was I graduated 2011, and probably 2012 is when I started doing the submissions. And so it was really like 12 to, what was it, 18, 19, so 6, 7 years. Yeah, but I don't know, I don't really stop. I'm afraid that it's all going to stop, so I just keep going. That's the real answer. Like I'm just really afraid that everyone's going to figure out that I'm don't really know what I'm doing, and or
You didn't freeze up. A lot of people get challenged. I've seen guys that come up out of the indie scene and their first book will come out and that book hits, and man, when it gets all that recognition, that has got to be a massive amount of pressure because you're doing that, and especially when it's a book where you've really let yourself go and you're like, I'm going to be Matt. Then people love Matt, but it's like, how am I more Matt for the next? You want to somehow kind of one up yourself,
yeah.
but how am I more Matt for my next book? I was just, was that ever something that you dealt with, or is it just something you seem like you kind of have just like, it happened, I took it in stride, and I tried to go.
I mean, there's some of that, but yes, definitely. Because yeah, that one was also that was the most personal like book to that point, and that had to be part of what resonated. That would like I really I mean, I don't want to go into detail of how much it's me and how much is it made up, how much is it fiction, but it definitely you really even the first because I originally released it in issues, self-publishing it. And when I was doing the first issue, it was only three, but um, I was really pretty self-conscious about it, and I wasn't confident in the idea at all. I was like, people really might not either get this, or they might really just mock me for it because you're really, like you said, I'm really putting myself out there in that book. Like I'm really kind of like it's pretty. You don't just come up with that. Like you don't just construct that from nothing. So, and then to your other point, yeah, once it's done, then I'm thinking, now what do I do? I don't know if I'm ever going to top that as far as like, well, you always attempt to, or that's always the goal. Like this next one, it's going to be the real thing. It's going to be the big epic. This is my masterpiece. This is my I think the art has pretty much always improved since then, but as far as an overall piece, an overall story, I don't think I've topped that. Like just something that works overall. I think that is still the best thing I've done, which maybe I shouldn't say that, but I it's the most like there's no fat on it. It just works. It's simple, but there's also a lot to it, and it just what I set out to do, I feel like I did it. And then every like stuff I've done after that, I attempted things, and maybe the story's bigger, but I kind of got lost, or it's a little messy. It's a little, nothing really matches up to that, I don't think, overall. So that's what I'm hoping. I mean, who knows? Maybe Faceless will come out, and I mean, it was crowdfunded, so it is out there, but it's getting a bigger release with Oni. So, maybe people will read that and say, no, 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 you topped it with this. But me personally, I don't know, because there's what you set out to do or what you have in your mind, and then what the actual execution is. I feel like with the Freak, I just something that was like lightning in a bottle. I don't know if I'm gonna. There was also this feeling that I've never had before, where it was, I cannot die before this is finished. This needs to be made. Like just I felt it to my bones. Like this needs to be created. I see it. I know what it is. I just need to complete it and put it out there. I don't care if anyone likes it or not. I mean, of course I want them to, but it it has to happen. and then but I've never had that feeling again. I've tried to like recapture it. I've tried I've tried to tap into that again, but nothing quite like that has ever, I haven't really felt that ever before or after. I don't know what you can even really say about that, but it just I'll never forget that feeling.
It just sounds like kind of a perfect storm, you know? You were driven for all of those years. You hit a point mentally where you were going to be yourself. You were going to do your own thing, and then you started drawing off of yourself. And like the autobiographical elements in there, I don't know you personally, but it did feel like that story, like some of the beats and some of the stuff that happens in it is a lot like Cankor. You've got like different levels to it, but the more base level and emotionality that you're able to put into it and take it down to its base level, the more like reality that it hits with is what it that's I think one of the biggest truths of that series for me is it just flows and it hits on such a large scale and yet personified by like characters that you're very invested in. I
Mhm.
If that makes any sense.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely incredible work, man. I don't want to harp too much on you about like critical praise and that kind of stuff. I'm just curious about because your stuff moving forward, you're an extremely humble guy. I don't hear you throwing around that crap like a lot of other guys do. And I did kind of want to harp on that book a little bit in case anybody who hasn't checked it out, so they can go and check it out. Because I personally, me, thought it was uh, pretty goddamn incredible. Um, Faceless, blue, like really, the art is absolutely insane. But I think you're just an all-around amazing package as a writer and artist. So if I get a little bit
Thanks.
ham-fisted about stuff, and it's too much, just yell at me. I do have kind of a tendency to fanboy out when I do these interviews, so I
No, you're
apologize.
good. You're good.
All right, so you kind of it feels like you came up through the independent circuit. You took all of these influences, which are like a myriad of things that are going on at this point. You put out your first book, and literally, I mean, I, I don't want to say instantaneously, like overnight, you were, the indie wunderkind, but you were like Matthew Allison is like one of the only other guys that I can think of. It was like one day I'd never heard of you, and then the next day it was like, you haven't read that? What the fuck is wrong with you? And I was really curious to see, where you would go from there. Can you talk a little bit how, that because you're still moving out of the independent sector, you finally get your break, and can you talk a little about moving in? You went to work with Dark Horse after that, correct?
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about your work with Dark Horse and how you got hooked up with them?
So pretty much right after the freak, um, then I was then we go back to more not failures, but weird occurrences. I paired up with a writer and spent, I don't know, a couple months on this one issue, and it just never never materialized into anything real. It just no one ever saw it. But anyway, then I'm like, let me go back to my doing my own thing again, and that was Static. So then I was working on that for a while, and just the first chapter slash issue, that one took me a while, and I got in touch with the colorist Bill Crabtree. Um, and long story short, I don't remember exactly how it happened, but he got it into the hands of Dark Horse, and um, basically through that they picked it up, and but it was just going to be a graphic novel, like just not issues. It would be a original graphic novel, and and he was gonna color it, but it just didn't work out. And then somewhere in there, Matt Kint, he read The Freak, and that's how he became aware of me. And again, I don't really know how that one even worked either fully. I never really know. I don't even know the exact details, but we ended up working together because of that. But the book that I did with him came out first, then Static got released right after. Because they strategically, you know, he's got more of a name, of course. So if we get eyes on this, more people will want Static. So they were done in a reverse order, but
Was it an interesting experience I guess you were still collaborating with people, you know? It seems like even though the projects didn't always come to fruition, you've always kind of kept one foot in both worlds with like collaborating with people. Because I was wondering what working with Matt Kent was like for you.
what was also during the beginning of the pandemic when I
Oh, I hadn't even thought about that.
right when I started it. And no one told me to, but I thought, because before I was doing Static, but it was still on my own. It still felt like I was just doing it on my own, and then occasionally I'd get in contact with them and just say, "Hey, here's where I'm at," and they'd say, "All right, good, keep going," and that'd be the end of it. So it was pretty much it was just me, but with Crimson Flower, in my mind, this is different now. Like I need to show and prove. This is the real deal. I'm in the like major leagues now. Like I need to hit a deadline. I need to, but because it was the pandemic, none of that was needed. So I kind of rushed it a little more than I needed to. Um, so, but other than that, I had experience working with writers before, so it wasn't really,
Sometimes
it
coming
wasn't,
from the independent sector and working with those writers and I don't mean to denigrate those writers whatsoever. It's just a very different type of relationship and back and forth. And I didn't Matt's not one of those guys that I get the feeling is like swinging around a baseball bat in the office screaming about his ideas or anything. But I was just curious, if there was a learning curve there and it kind of has to for me personally, I have to contextualize everything through myself. Like coming through the independent circuit, you have your big breakout book, and then you're gonna have like Static, and that's taking a little bit longer, and they want to push this other book, and it's obviously they want you to have your best foot forward. So there's got to be like added pressure, and you're working with the guy who's been in the industry, and
oh yeah,
I'm
for
the new
sure.
guy, and
That was a big part of what it was fueling that. Like, oh, I don't want, this is what it was. I didn't want to be the weak link. Who's this new guy? Who's this? He's got this weird style. Never heard of him. And I feel like I still got some of that anyway. But, it, and, but yeah, a lot of it was just put on myself. No one ever even hinted at that. And working with everyone was a breeze. It wasn't like it was as comfortable and easy as you could hope. But I did it to myself. But that was the best I could do. Like, I feel like that just naturally happened. If I'm by myself, it's easier because there's no one to disappoint. There's no one to, other than myself. And so, but doing that, it naturally just came up like you need to really prove yourself here. Like, do you even deserve this? Like, so that's how I felt. Like, you need to be quick, you need to be amazing, you need to be just the all-star that you can be. And I don't know. I did my best. So
I felt like there was a lot of stuff coming out on that series that, because as you said, your art really is constantly changing and evolving. And the face of your art that I'm most familiar with was Faceless in the Family. And I kind of did feel like that was a pretty big turning point where I could see you. I don't want to say like being more Matt, but I just think like getting more comfortable and kind of like further refining your style. So I think you really, if that's what you set out to accomplish, on that series, not being the weak link, not being the new guy, you did a very, very admirable job, man.
thanks. Yeah, I
Uh,
think
so go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say like that was like an experimental, like tunnel, and then when I emerged through the tunnel, I got to Faceless, and now I've like kind of honed it more. It's more, as you said, it's more refined now. So I don't know if that book made me do it or that's just where I was at the time, but the style is constantly changing. But at that point, it was really like, especially the last couple of issues, it was getting strange, almost too strange at certain points. And then, but once I emerged at the end of the tunnel, it's like I feel like I got a hold of it. Like it's like I got these new powers, but they're just like going out of whack. But then after a while of using them, I'm like, oh, I see. You just kind of do this, and now it's a little more. I feel a little more like me. So
So I know you've done a little bit of cover work in between that and while you were doing, I think it was while you were doing Faceless in the Family, right? Because you got a couple of I think there was like, did you do an Usagi Yojimbo cover at one point?
yeah, yeah,
I,
yeah.
I, are you looking into doing more cover work? You know, I think you've popped up like 3 or 4 times in the last year or so that I know of, which is pretty impressive for some of the stuff that you've popped up on. Is that something that is just coming your way, or are you going after that kind of stuff?
Mostly it's just coming to me, but like from what I've found, they'll let you know if they'll let you know. You can put out as many feelers as you want, like, or you can scream as loud as you want. Hey, I want to do this, but they'll let you know. So whatever I got, and I appreciate it. But yeah, I want to do a lot more. Um, like I just did another for an Image comic, but I can't say what it is now. But it's a pretty cool one. I can tell you after this if you want. But
Oh, fuck yeah, you're gonna tell me after
yeah,
this.
but that one came out of the blue. Like, just hey, do you want to do this? I'm like, yeah, of course.
I'm
So
I'm glad that stuff is coming your way, man. Your work is really incredible. Can we talk a little bit about what has been artistically popping up for you in the last like year and a half or 2 years? I just feel like looking back at your stuff, there's like a telescopic nature to your art where you're learning, and I can see you refining your narrative and like storytelling aspects for a long time at the beginning. You're also working on just, learning how to draw fundamentals, that kind of stuff, and figuring yourself out. But I really feel like with the last little bit of cover work and then Faceless in the Family, there is a new like visual lexicon that is coming to life for you, and it kind of like you said, like new superpowers you're learning to use. Can you talk a little bit about if you're conscious of it? Because I know a lot of this is happening for you subconsciously, and I keep pressing you on this stuff, and you're like, it just kind of happens. Uh,
um, ooh, yeah, that's a tough one to put into words.
I know it's a
Yeah,
weird, it just feels
no,
like,
it's a fair question. I just how do I uh yeah, what were you gonna say?
no, because I don't want to get into like a huge philosophical discussion, and I don't want to like uh harp on like just different aspects of it, but there's like a confidence that you're bringing to your stuff now, where it's like before I felt like you had a couple of different defined like ideas or ways that maybe you would approach the page when it's a blank page. I'm going to do a really cool figure here, or I'm going to use some nice imagery and work around it. But your storytelling has gotten to the point where I don't see you struggling like that on the page now. Mostly it's about like self expression and being able to laser image that idea onto the paper. And it was interesting, to hear you say that you more successfully achieved that on your first project and kind of are struggling to get back to that point. So I didn't know if Faceless felt like kind of a breakthrough in that sense for you, and you're more getting back to maybe being able to amalgamate those things.
Um, Hmm.
I've gone
uh,
completely insane. Ignore
no, no,
me.
no, 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 no. It's not you. It's not you. I just never talk about this stuff, so it's hard to do that. I'm just kind of doing it, and I'm doing my own weird stuff up here, and sort of like translate that is not always the easiest. I could say like through the evolution or whatever you want to call it, there are definitely moments where I'll notice like I've kind of hit a plateau here. I've kind of like I'm just here now, and I know I don't like where I am, but you don't really know what to do about that. And then more time passes, and then you look back and like, oh, a lot has changed. So a lot of it I don't even notice, but I could look back and recognize what has changed. I just don't remember it happening all the time. So I, I mean, it's really simplifying it, but a lot of it is just doing it, and it just kind of happens. I get that's a terrible answer, but a lot of it is that like um
No such thing as a terrible answer. That's the answer for you.
okay.
You are trying to, because I see that as a big part of what you're doing with your art. It's trying to get this onto paper.
Hmm.
And it was just interesting for me to hear you talk about how successful you were, earlier on in your career, and then how you've kind of, I don't want to say struggle. I think that's the wrong word. I don't mean struggle to get back there. Searching for that ability and that purity of vision again. And
Yes.
Faceless has brought a lot of really new, interesting stuff to your line work that I've seen. I feel like come out a lot of your commission work, where you're kind of able to romp and run free and explore these incredible ideas that come to you. And I've seen more and more of that inserted into your sequential work, and I was just curious if that was something that maybe, I didn't know if that was conscious and you're learning stuff and applying it, but it seems like you're basically just throwing everything that you can at a page all the time, and the results speak for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, some of it's that. Some of it's like I'll have some breakthrough and I'll notice it. Like, oh, I just figured that out. Now that's in my tool belt. So then I can take that and just apply it where it makes sense. Yeah, I don't even know how to.
There is no right or wrong answer. You gave your answer. It's fine, dude. I'm just curious about getting into here as much as I can. And like, because, and a lot of that for me is because this is what ends up on the paper. And I don't see a lot of artists that do that. I see a lot of people that second guess themselves. I see a lot of guys who are constantly revising their work. I see a lot of guys that are walking backwards. I see a lot of guys that don't learn. See a lot of guys that are very uh, unconscious of their own work in a dangerous, dangerous sense. And I've never gotten that from you. So that's all that is. It's just an attempt to try
I
to
don't know if
crawl
this.
into your skull, brother.
I don't know if this interview reflects that.
God, I
Just
hope so.
I
Everybody
just
better be, seriously, everybody had better be going out and checking out Faceless in the Family. If you don't do it because the interview's good, or Matt, or you don't find Matt interesting, that's fine. Do it as a favor to your Uncle Jerk. I am telling you, I see a lot of books. A lot. I can pan this camera around this room, and you're surrounded by literally so many thousands of comic books, it would hurt your brain. This book is different. It looks different. It reads different. Matt is a voice that needs to be heard in comics. So just do me a favor. Beginning of November, Oni is dropping Faceless in the Family. Go out, pick up issue one. It's gonna be like $5-6 that you throw. You can't get a fucking Marvel comic for that to save your life, and it's gonna be a piece of shit Spider-Man story you don't give a shit about. So do me a favor, go pick up issue one of Faceless in the Family and just check it out. Look at this incredible work. There is an artistry and a craft that I have not seen brought to the page in a long time in an incredibly impressive way, Matt. And that's why I want to do this interview. And I'd love to talk a little bit about Faceless and the family. Um, just kind of like getting people hyped up and getting them ready for the series. Um, that's where the book is totally finished. You originally funded it through Zoop, like what last year, correct, or
Yeah.
early this year?
Um, well, I finished it earlier this year, but it was fully funded later
Okay.
last year. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So they're like, you can get out and you can look at cool previews online from guys that have got their Zoop graphic novels. If you guys are, incredulous at all, you can see interiors and stuff. And I do highly recommend getting on Matt's Instagram as well. And like I said, check out his YouTube page also if you're interested in his work. I love watching Matt work. It's just like entrancing. You will find yourself like, oh my God, the lines. Um, you have I come from a tattooing background. That's my professional art background. Before I was diagnosed with tremors and lost my job, that's what I did. And I was always taught like by my tattoo master and by my art teachers before me, you pull a line one time. You do that with a brush, you do that with a number 3 pen if you want a number 3 line, that's kind of thing. And when I watch you work, you do some really interesting stuff. And I remember at one point you're like, when you draw a line, make sure you always use a really tiny pen and maybe draw it 3 or 4 times so it has more personality. And that is the kind of like attention to detail I see in every bit of your art. I am curious where that kind of mentality, a lot of that stuff is going to be lost in reproduction from getting shrunk down. It's not gone. Lost is not gone, people. This is why Sam Keith looks fucking worlds better than all these people that you see now. He put in work that you don't see. I'm curious where your head is at, Matt, as a creator in 2023 doing that, and your approach, because it is mastery at this point. It is truly mastery to watch you work on a page. You might be experimenting, but it's incredible.
Well, thanks. Um, before I got to this book, I I kind of like I kind of I I uh I figured out this this technique, I guess you could say, where um you well, what I would do is I would start as light as possible, and it's a lot of layering, a lot of steps, because that's one thing that I think people, they kind of, I wouldn't say they do wrong, but you're you're jumping to the end right away, whereas like, and I get it. There's a reason why no one does this, because it takes so much time. For the most people, it doesn't make sense to be doing this. So that's a lot of what I'm doing. It's several steps, penciling super light. Then I'll do essentially what is like a second penciling phase, but it's really inking. It's just a very thin, tiny, light line where most people would watch me do that and just be, why are you? But there's a process to it. There's a reason for it. And then from there, start working in those textures, and then towards the end, I'll kind of solidify it all with like, outlines and that kind of stuff, and like finish it. So it's a lot of steps, and I don't really use much whiteout. So I mean, maybe it sounds obvious, but like, you can always add more. You can't really take away. So I try to, that's a huge, I always try to be delicate Like don't, if you can help it, don't just jump to the end. Don't just like assume, because when there's like a gradient, when there's um a range of values, you can jump to something too dark and it's just ruined. It's just, or it's off from what you wanted it to be. And I don't always get it right, but part of that is just dipping a toe in. Like use that mentality. Don't just, do a cannonball in the deep end, and then you mess the whole thing up, and well, you wonder why. So that's really a lot of the philosophy, I guess, is I figured that out, that for me that works. Like just, if you really, I think of it like I'm making a homemade meal, I'm using all these different ingredients, taking my time. I don't care if it takes all day. I'm making like a feast for your eyes, whereas everyone else is, they're just making hot pockets. They're just, you got to churn stuff out. You got to churn stuff out. It's like, why? Then when it's done, it tastes like it came out of the microwave. And again, that's not me downing anyone. I get it. A lot of times you have to do that. It's just, it's unfortunate that a lot of people, that's like the standard. That's so for me, I doing my own thing. It's like, why not kind of take your time with it, and I don't know, do the best you can. I don't know. So I just think of it like that. It's gotten slower and slower and slower, but I'd like to think it's improved. So yeah, it's just kind of like I'm making the Thanksgiving meal kind of approach. So, but there's plenty of artists that can just grab some ink, grab paper, whip some stuff on there, and it looks amazing. So really, that it comes down to the artist, really, if you think about it. Just, this is what works for me.
But
Um,
I always feel like you're telling a story with your images, though. Like those guys do great pinups, but even when I look at your pinup work, Matt, it's like the minute my mind completely blew and it changed. I was looking at a Daredevil commission that you had done, and I loved the shading. He was sitting in front of this, the outline of this building, and I was looking over his shoulder, and that's when I realized all of this shit was done with D's. You had taken little tiny D's and used them as shading instead of lines, and I was instantly hooked. I started going back and looking at everything you had done, just dissecting it and pulling it apart, because it's that level of attention to detail you see from no one else anymore, man. It takes me back. Is that just something that you have like worked towards yourself and like invented and come up with, or what's your training like for back, as far as artistic training? Did you pick that up from anybody?
Maybe, I don't know. That was kind of the phase where I was in the tunnel still, and I was just experimenting. And some of that was working, some of it wasn't. Like I don't think I would really do that. It's almost like I said, now I've got my I've got my set of like things that I do almost. And that was just a time where like some of that stuff was good, but some of it was a little too, I tried stuff and it, all right, that was a little too, just, it's not working. It's too experimental. But you have to try stuff to, so, oh, my art background, I'm I'm just self-taught and I just try stuff, and
I just didn't
but
know. I mean, it's a really interesting. I draw a lot the same way that you do. I'll go in with a crow quill and I'll lay in like a Hunt 102, and then I go over and I line, and then I do a bunch of other stuff, and it's the direct opposite of what I was basically always taught art wise. But it's strange because the more I look into the artists that I really love, it's kind of a love of the process that I feel like we all kind of share, that a lot of other people are trying to circumvent by doing commercial or pumping out as much work as possible, which is just not something that I see from you at all. And I was really curious, where your headspace comes at from that. Because on one hand, you're creating art. And it's this thing that has to represent you, and it needs to be timeless, and it needs to be the best that you can possibly do. And on the other hand, you're making a fucking living doing it, man. I mean, you have to be able to put out enough that you're paying
Yeah,
the bills. So
yeah, yeah. This is the whole thing. This is a big thing. Like, the game I'm playing is kind of the quality over quantity, and I'm hoping that kind of pans out, but I don't really know. I'm in the middle of it. In some ways it is working out. I mean, I don't want to get into like money talk, but like the guy who's pumping out stuff, how much are you really going to charge if, whereas I'm looking at it like I'm putting in, I might spend an actual week doing one commission, and you look at it, I mean, obviously there's a lot of thought put into it. There's a lot of time, actual time. There's so many lines, which doesn't make it better. It's just more was put into it, just speaking in general. So really at the same time, in a lot of ways, it kind of equals out because with the amount of time I'm putting into it, when you divide up what I got for it, it's almost the same. So, but I'm hoping long term the quality of the work will speak for itself, and that's what's going to set me apart from everyone else. That, and again, I hope it's not coming off like I'm really in my own thing over here. I'm not trying to. It's
I,
just that's the standard. That's what you're always told. Come on, you got to page a day. You got to fire stuff off. You got to just. But I've always looked at that and thought, why? Why not spend 2 days? You might be double the quality, double the time to think about it. Like that alone, if you might work on it the same amount of time, but if you actually spend extra time thinking about how am I going to do this, it, the result might be so much better. Like, all right, what kind of composition am I going to do? What kind of shading am I going to do? How am I going to, where's the light source? What pose is going to go on here? Like, there's so many things you could think about before. And as people who make things, we want to just dive in. I get it. Like you want to dive in and just, I want to start putting lines down. And there's something to that. That can be cool too. But for me, when I've gotten the best results, it's when I've sat back. Let's be patient here. Let's get the ingredients out, measure, like think about it, like taste it along the way, take a break. And yes, it will take a lot longer time, but I don't know. To me, that's a better approach. Like, so I
I
don't know.
I would agree too, and I don't want to be crass either, and I don't want to, get into I don't like pressing people on pay and that kind of stuff. But the one of the big reasons that I do the indie spotlight is not just so people can find independent creators, which is a huge part of it, and buy your guys' book and support you so that you go make more because I like your stuff. Also, it's for other creators, and I think it is important for other creators, whether it be writers or artists, to know that the prescribed norm of the industry of, hey, let's crank out Kirby amount of pages every day. Everybody ain't Jack Kirby. Jack could do it and give you quality. That's
Right.
what made him fucking special.
Yeah.
If you look at page output, Kurt Swan had him toasted 10 to 1 on pages. And yeah, I said 10 to 1, guys. You can look it up. Kurt Swan smoked him. How many people talk about Kurt Swan on Superman these days? That's that's all I'm saying. And when I look at your stuff, you know, I can tell that everything. You remind me a lot of like I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but Victor Alpe. Even with your
Yeah.
commission work, I just like when I look at your commissions, I can see a story. And when I can see a story inside of a single pinup, inside of a single image that has nothing else to prop it up, that is saying a lot. And that also brings me to something else I'm kind of curious about. I'd like to talk about your commissions a little bit. I feel like you're all about experimentation. I've heard you use that word a few times. Figuring out where things work and they don't work. looking at your commissions, it like blew me away. You've got two books out of them, one of which you can check out in my last mailbag episode if anybody wants to get a peek at Matt's work. And once Faceless comes out, I'm also going to be hooking up an indie spotlight that will just be looking at Faceless and that sketchbook as well. Um, but looking at the sketchbook, I see a lot of stuff that it appears to me that you learn there and then take onto the page. Is that something that does occur a lot? Do you feel like you learn a lot from your commissions? Some people do them for fun and to make money. I feel like you're learning a lot and experimenting and pushing with your commissions as well.
Yeah, like each one I feel like is like I think of them as like they're not just throwaway, like just do this real quick and draw Wolverine, whatever. Like everyone's done it. Like who cares? Like no, each one is like, yeah, I'm trying to up my last one for the most part. I'm trying like I set the standard for myself. You can't go back. You need to at least maintain at the very least. So each one, yeah, I'm trying. Plus, pretty much every time it's a challenge because a lot of the times I won't know the character or I've heard of them, but I don't know enough to because I want to fully that sometimes people don't get that. Like they'll say, "Hey, I love this character. Can you just?" It's like sometimes I'll watch a full movie. I'll look up tons of reference. Like I'll spend a whole day just learning the character so that I don't want to disrespect that character. And you ask me, you want a full, I'm trying to do a masterpiece pretty much every time. Like you got to have some understanding of the characters to be able to do it. So yeah, like it's a pretty in depth. I don't know if it's obvious or
That's
not, but pretty much
it.
everything I do is intense. Like I'm diving in, I'm going hardcore. Like this is not a game. This is not like I'm really, yeah, like it's I don't know how else to do it. I just it's an obsession. Like I just and then yeah, so then anything that I pick up from doing that, I feel like everyone I am learning even if a little something, whether I know what that even is or not. It's at the very least it's experience. It's that much more experience, and then I can take that to whatever I do next. So yeah, and a lot of times I'll like right now I think I've got like 5 commissions just waiting like to do, and I will kind of procrastinate because there's such immense pressure that each one's got to be like it's got to be a moment when I post it. Like it's got to be, you know what I mean? So and but I feel I actually read somewhere that procrastinating is part of like it's actually your brain kind of like preparing for what you're about to do, whether you know it or not. It's in the back of your mind. You're kind of and I will sometimes I'll spend an entire day thinking about what I'm actually going to do. I don't even pick up a pen, nothing. I'll be thinking about it. Like, how can I pose this character? What can they be doing? I mean, people are paying a good amount of money for it. They will own this piece. Like, it'll be on the wall, maybe. Like, I think of it as a big deal. Like, I don't just, this is not just, oh, I'll just do a little drawing. Like, no, it's like, so I don't know. I feel like that's another thing. Whatever you put into it, that kind of people pick up on that. It's not a, if you, if your attitude going into it is just like, yeah, it's whatever. Just who cares? You don't need to overdo it or you what? No, fuck that. Like that is you're like that's not for me. Like no, take this serious. Like what are you talking about? This this is what you make it. So if you make it that, yeah, all right, I guess it doesn't matter much. But to me, it like put everything into it. Do it. I do it as if like if I die tomorrow, The last one I did was I could die happy. I put everything I could into it. It's got my DNA all in there. It's yeah. I could go on and on about this, but yeah, it's pretty serious to me. Like it's I don't know. I don't know how this is even coming off, but
No, it's very interesting to hear because when I look at your stuff, I do, like I said, that was one of the first things that hit me was when I look at your images, I see stories. I don't see a pretty picture. I always see like something is happening. They're in the process of doing something or emoting who they are as a character with the way that they're moving or their surroundings. That was something that I was very curious about. And to know that you sit around for a day thinking about, like, nope, okay, I don't understand how this character needs to fit into his surroundings and his world and his emotions and his archetype and doing these people justice. Dude, I know people that charge exponentially more for commissions than you who literally shit those things out like Yoshi shits out fucking eggs in Mario. It's just kind of like, what color are you gonna get? Ah, it might be Nito. Maybe you're gonna fly. Maybe we get the cool blue one. But with you, I always see like a contemplative approach, and it is nice to hear that it's not just something that like naturally comes to you because that's always annoying to hear.
well, I could do that, but like I said, each one I'm trying to it needs to be a certain level, or I don't want to repeat myself. I don't want to just phone it in. Like, so I could come up if I had a gun to my head. Yes, I could pump out something in a few hours or something like that, and just come up with a pose. And I could do that, but no, I can't. Really, I couldn't do that. But unless my life was on the line, I'm not gonna just. I don't know. I'm passionate about it too. Like I actually care. I'm not just to me, like if you're not thinking about it that way, then just get a regular job. Why are you just bullshitting? Like you get what I'm saying? Like
You're torturing yourself needlessly. There are other things, even in art, even commercial art, that you could be doing that would be much more monetarily fulfilling. If that's what you want to do and you want to go and just pump out shit and make money, there are much better places to do it. I personally have never understood the people that keep one toe in the comics world doing that, and they're almost invariably the same guys that you catch whining and bitching and moaning because they don't get paid enough for pages and stuff. Which is why I like I said, I didn't want to be crass and I don't want to poke and I don't want to pry, but I think it is important to explore the fact that you spend more time on your art and are thereby monetarily remunerated a little bit better for it as a result of that. And that there are two paths that you can take in the industry, and that you should not laboriously or like feel need to be tied to either one.
yeah.
So I think it's very nice to hear because the passion that you have and the thought that you have for me comes across 10,000 fold in the page. That's just me looking at your stuff, having looked at a million people who do art, Matt. I can tell when someone cares. I can tell when a line is deliberate, and I can tell also going back to your point of having more lines on a page. I know what you mean, but that's bullshit. I have a lot of guys who have a lot more lines on the page than you do. None of them are as contemplative. They don't serve a point. They're there to conceal the fact that they did not think about the composition, that they did not put together the background, that they did not do, oh shit, I didn't draw feet. Crap, I felded these feet. All right, get out the paintbrush. We're just going to spatter all over the bottom. Now he's got
Yeah.
smoke coming up from the ground. I don't see that in your work, my friend. I see a very contemplative, intelligent person who cares about his craft and what he puts forward and what he charges people for. And I see a lot of you in your art, which is why I ask fairly personal questions trying to get into your head, because I see a lot of you in your art. And in kind of getting back to that, it's not as autobio. It's not as bitingly personal as the book that you know you might have gotten your most accolades for. But from what I've seen of Faceless, unfortunately, I missed out on the Zoop campaign, so I haven't read it all. But from what I've read of Faceless, I feel like you are treading a really nice ground now in between telling more expansive world building stories, but also concentrating a little bit more on the characters that inhabit those worlds and make up those stories. Did you feel like you were hitting on a few more cylinders for Faceless and the Family as well, or is it just kind of when you're done, you have what you have?
Well, it was actually going to be a little more. There were still going to be a lot of characters, but it was going to be a little more. It was going to be a lot simpler of a story, and it was just going to be very kind of, to most people would be kind of boring. But I knew that I can't really do that. I'm not. I need to make something that people are going to be a little bit entertained by. So I need to do more with this. I need to, not in a bad way, not in a bad way, but I can't just do what I want. So that was an intentional thing. Like in the world that it's in, that was actually an idea from another story that I didn't really follow through with that one. It didn't pan out. But the world, I knew that was a pretty good idea. So I saved that to the side and thought like, oh, a future story, this will work somewhere. So that it just worked perfectly, and it helped broaden the whole thing. I don't know if that answers your question, but
It does. It does because it seems like you brought in a pre-existing infrastructure from something else and were probably able to amalgamate it very well with the character-driven story that you had in mind, and it seems that you melded them very, very well. So yeah, that does answer my question because it like I said, it's a much more expansive world. I feel like um, encompassing kind of you feel like you're inhabiting it. You know what I mean? But I feel the same kind of draw to the characters that I did. So I was just curious if that was something. I was curious how you would if you felt like you achieved your goal there too as well, because you seem like you are your one of your biggest critics.
oh, you don't want to even know. uh, like I said, I probably shouldn't say this, but still, I think the Freak is the one where I've fully what I set out to do or what I hoped for. I really achieved it there the most. I never even get it 100%. I never fully, but so far, that is the one. But I feel like also the bigger the story and the more that's going on, the more risk there is where you might kind of lose. There's more room for failure. There's more room for I didn't really quite get this moment right, or this I could have been handled differently, or so that has to be factored in there. But I feel like this is better than some of the stuff I've done. But is it the best? No, if I'm being brutally honest. But most of the art, I should say, I'm pretty happy with. As far as like, like as
You
far
said
as
pretty happy. I'm gonna reach through this screen and choke you. When you guys pick up this book, you will understand why I'm like, holy shit, pretty happy with the. Oh my god. Sorry, go ahead. It's amazing art, Matt. It's incredible to look at. It is a visual feast.
I am my own worst
I
critic.
know. I'm
I
just
just
telling you, as an outsider, as a guy who just is learning about you and coming into your stuff, it is a visual feast, my friend. You are accomplishing things that in 40 years of reading comic books, I've seen people glean on the surface of. I, dude, it is amazing stuff. I'm really
thank you.
looking forward to seeing where you're going, which is why I was curious how bad you were going to beat yourself up over Faceless and the Family. Because I haven't talked to you for like 45 minutes. I already knew you were going to be like, well, it doesn't really live up to my, it's okay.
Well, uh, part of it is since making that, I've been looking more into writing, just learning more about writing.
Hmm.
And I feel like I've learned a lot since then. So definitely the story itself, I think I got in certain elements that I didn't even know I was necessarily doing, but I'm glad they're in there. But now I know other things that I could have done differently, or so part of that is, but that's going to happen anyway. That's a good thing if you're learning more, and hey, the next one will hopefully be even better. But I'm as happy with it as I could be. I should say that. So I'm not upset about it. It's just there are definitely little segments in there that maybe I wasn't as motivated that day. Maybe I was having a bad day. Maybe certain things made that page not what I think it could have been, or maybe that layout wasn't the best. And but overall, yes, the story or sorry, the art probably the best I've done so far, just drawing wise. So that alone, I hope people check it out. Maybe the story's not even for you, but the art itself, hopefully, there's something there for you to enjoy. But I still feel like, which is a good thing, I feel like I still haven't made like my defining work. I haven't even begun to. I'm still learning a lot, and I'm still improving, and I haven't done it yet. I haven't done what I wanted to do yet. So
Still climbing the mountain.
definitely, definitely.
Definitely. I can feel that. And I sense like a lot of like when we're having this conversation that a lot of what you're doing with your art is trying to find a good medium between using all of those new tools on your belt and finding the emotional purity and honesty that you were able to achieve, in that book that you received so much acclaim for. And I think that it's really interesting to see you try to meld those ideas and I think Faceless is probably as close as I've seen with you successfully doing that with the stories. Because I did feel a lot of emotional resonance like I did with the characters, but I think that there was a much larger story. And it's true, you do have a much larger chance of perhaps losing sight of things or maybe losing your characters inside of that world and diluting the story. I think doing a really good job at finding a middle ground. I was curious how well you successfully felt like you pulled that off and what you learned from Faceless, what you'll be taking into your next project. I don't even know if you've thought that far, but I was just curious, what you'll be taking and kind of leaving.
I'm kind of in the middle of that now. Like I just got back from New York Comic Con, and before going there, I was kind of like at a fork in the road of like just questioning a lot of things. Like it is spending all this time on this in this art style the way I'm doing it, is it worth it? Does it even make sense to be doing this? Should I keep doing my own books? Should I maybe am I limiting myself by only doing my own thing? Should I collaborate more? Should I try to work with another company like the big two, or maybe do like an IDW, like, you know, work for hire type thing, just to get my name out there more. And but from the feedback I got, that was the biggest takeaway. Like it wasn't really the best show. It was all right, but the biggest takeaway I got was the amount of positive feedback on Faceless, and just where I'm at artistically right now was that set me on the path of like, you know what, just do your own thing. Like you're on the right path. Just keep doing it. We love what you're doing. Like some people telling me I'm one of their favorites, and I love your art style. And I'm like, all right, you know what? Because it's one thing to read a comment. It's one thing, but getting it in person, and then it's like if you hear it two or three times, it's like, they're just being nice. Or but I got it a lot more than any other show. That was the biggest thing I got was So you know what? Now I'm pretty confident that yeah, that's what I should be doing. I'm just that's kind of my lane. I should just stick with that, do my own thing, and maybe it's going to be a longer road to getting to wherever I want to be. And I don't even fully know what that is, but basically, yes, keep doing your thing. It's good. Keep working on it. We like it. And who can ask for anything better than that? Like it's a pretty good response. So I don't even know what the question was, but yeah, that's so yeah, pretty much. Oh yeah, I'm kind of there now. Like I've got a few different ideas that I've been thinking about writing for other artists because I've already got one kind of lined up that no one knows about but the artist, and they've agreed to it, but they're busy with something else, so that one's kind of set aside for them. And then I've got another one I've been just messing with for 2 or 3 months, just working on it. It's not really, it's all right, but like I said, I want to make great stuff. Like I want to make a really, and I've learned a lot about writing since Faceless. So there's just certain elements that need to fall into place, and this one's, I don't know if I need to just set it aside and leave it alone or just keep kind of chiseling away at it. But because the other one I did, that one just it fell into place. Like it just it not saying it just came to me, but it just all kind of flowed. And I think it's one of the better things I've written. So I'm really happy about that one. But I'm wanting to do more stuff. And this, like I said, this one, I'm like, it's I don't know if I'm just missing something or I need to give it a rest, but it's so there's that. And then I've got another story. I've got like three going at once that is probably the one that I would draw. And it's let me ask you this. Out of everything you've read of mine, do you think it's because this is one thing that I get worried about is not even subject matter wise, but do you think there's too much of a similarity or like
I know what you're driving at, but no. I feel like there's a through line on your work that's comparable to somebody like the Los Hernandez, maybe Klaus, um, where Burns, especially as well. There's a flavor,
Mhm.
a unique ambiance, and perhaps even a artistic flair that is
Mhm.
always somewhat similar in the same vein of the same voice, but
Mhm.
certainly not singing the same song.
Okay, because that is something I worry about. It
I
because there's a gray line of like I'm being
being
myself,
repetitive and being
but
original.
yeah, or am I? I'm being me. I'm being what's honest, but is it too much of the same?
Oh, no, 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 certainly not. I've never felt you to repeat yourself at all. No, no,
Okay.
no, 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 no. So, I would say like Keith, there's recurring motifs
Yes.
or an ambiance or a feeling, but definitely no. I've never felt like you were saying the same thing over and over again with your stories whatsoever.
Or not even necessarily that, but I mean that is a concern, but just do I need to like completely just go left field and just because this one that I thought of, I feel like the one that I think I would draw next, it's I like it, but it's for one, I don't think another artist would really get what I'm really going for there. So there's that. So I'd have to do it,
Mm.
but I'm a little concerned that it's a little too like a little too I don't know, just maybe I should switch it up a little more. But if that didn't even cross your mind, then
I have never looked at your work once and felt like the art didn't suit the subject matter. every different thing that I saw from you, whether it be large things, as in a different complete feel to the art, or as something as simple as complete line weight variations on like bodies to make them seem more subdued and smaller and more emotionally vulnerable, or beefy and larger and more super heroic in the sense of Faceless and stuff. I don't see any part of your art that ever stands still or repeats itself. That's one of the things that I find most interesting about you. And if I were to give you one piece of advice, if it feels like the piece that you need to be drawing because only you can have it up here, whatever the fuck it is you have up here, man,
Yeah.
laser print that shit down because you
All right.
are. I can see you just learning and evolving and changing every time you do something, whether that's from page to page, project to project. So I would trust my instincts. They have not led you astray so far.
Thank you. All right. Yeah. Maybe that's just me being my own critic again, but I'm just,
It's got to be scary. Like, am I
it is.
being
It
too
is.
repetitive? Do people want to see more of the same? Am I changing too much? Am I not changing enough? What do people want to dude, it's
Yeah.
you're an up and coming independent creator and you don't have a big PR machine or like huge, pieces in Rolling Stones telling people to read your shit. Those days for comic book writers, I think, are over. Morrison, Gaiman, those guys are gone. They're over the hill. They're passe at this point. And the torch is passing to people like you who I think are much more akin to like heavy metal stories where people want to associate with the creator and the person making that art and that story. It's really cool to hear you talking about wanting to branch off and do some writing and collaborate in kind of the reverse aspect that I would think of you as a creator, because I always, you're so strikingly original. I always think of you as a visual creator first, and then the story secondarily. Is that the case for yourself? Do you see yourself as more of a writer or more of as an artist or just a combination of the two?
Definitely more of an artist, but I'm more, when it comes to writing, I'm more, like I'm trying to figure it out. I'm more intrigued by it, more like it feels more like a puzzle. It feels more like I don't really fully, like I'm pretty confident in my art, as critical as I can be. I'm pretty I can at least get the job done. I know I can, but with writing, I'm more, I want to figure this out. I really want to like be great at that too. So I'm really like, I'm just like I'm fascinated with the process, and I'm constantly watching videos and like, see, you want to do this with a character, then they have to have this happen, and because the way I made a lot of my first few books, it was a little bit more, the process was not as strict, or not as, it was more kind of like just imagining things, and I'd write a full script for myself, but I would I didn't really know, no one taught me writing, or I just kind of, you know, I would write a script, but along the way I'm learning so many things that I'm learning what I didn't know. So, but again, I'm hoping that I'll be getting better through that, and it could take me at least a year to do one of these books. So it's like I want to do even more stories. So if I can write for someone else, um, then that's one way I can do it. I can get more out there, and there's more ideas and stories I have in my head that I want to make, but I can only make so many. Let's be real. So, um, but yeah, I'm not as, to me, I feel like I'm not as, I've been drawing my whole life since I was 3 or something like that. So I'm, I'm, I'm by no means bored with drawing, but I figured out a good amount about it. with writing, it's still, compared to drawing, it's still a newer thing. So I'm more like, I'm just more trying to figure it out. And I'm just like, I can't really make sense of it as easily. I can't, I'm just like, I'm very good at coming up with ideas, but that's not a story. Anybody can come up with ideas. Like, oh, I have a guy with a, whatever, shark arm, and he's got a, whatever, a gun, and he wants to find this. And that's not what a story is. That's just a series of events. So there's just so much more to it. There are all these, people didn't just make up, theme and a character and all these, like, story structure, and I'm not saying you need to follow that, but there's something to that. And with the first, it's not the first one I've ever done. I've actually pitched other ones that just didn't get picked up. But this one that I just recently did, I followed a different structure. I followed like, I planned the whole thing out before scripting anything, and it worked so much better. Like, it it just kind of fell into place. Like, as soon as I got this element, all right, now I know to figure this out, and then this needs to happen. And don't get me wrong, some of it was still tough, but it was it I figured it out better than previous stuff. Um, and I think, like I said, I think the end result, it's a better written thing than a lot of what I've done.
Interesting. So is it sounds like that's going to be hopefully something that you'll be pursuing, in between while you write and draw books, is maybe, outsourcing some of those ideas to other artists, and maybe getting a little bit of a brand underneath your belt.
Yeah.
Do you guys, have you thought at all, or are you thinking about like independent Kickstarter type, Zoop type stuff, or are you guys looking for somebody like Oni or something like that to handle stuff?
Probably more like Oni or Dark Horse or something like that. But potentially, if they don't want it, we might kickstart it or Zoop or something like that. So I just want to make it. Like, it's like, I'm pretty happy with this. Like, and I'm not always like that. Like, I sometimes I feel like, and the artist fits perfectly, I think. Like, it's just, they're perfect for it. So I just want to I want to see it made. And I think that's the plan. Like, just kind of do my own thing, writing and drawing my thing, and that's a whole epic quest of its own. But then on the side, I can write these stories and hopefully do more. So whether
Ex-
that's like one or two at a time, I'm not sure, but who knows? I might not be able to get it off the ground, because that's the other challenge too, getting people to see me as a writer. They know I write my own stuff, but convincing some people that you can do that is, convincing them that I can draw is hard enough. And it so yeah, there's that bridge to cross too.
It should
Yeah.
be fun. I wish you all the best. Last thing I want to bother you about is your experiences with like independent publication, putting out your own books as opposed to like the kickstarting, like Zoop kind of stuff. You have put out books independently. You've put out books through Zoop. You haven't directly like kickstarted books or anything, have you? I just remember you working through Zoop as like a fulfillment campaign.
I was part of an anthology through Kickstarter,
Mhm.
but I never ran that one or anything. I just did my little story, and that was about it. But yeah, just, this is my first crowdfunding thing with Zoop.
So
So
how was your experiences in independent publishing as opposed to working with like a fulfillment? I've heard a lot of really good things about Zoop. I've been following them since they started, and I think it's a pretty interesting idea as far as crowdsourcing goes, taking that and actually like really turning an eye towards comic books and stuff. I was just curious what if you found one to be like easier, or there were like strange hiccups that you hadn't anticipated. Some people really really like putting out their own independent books, and other guys just, crowdfunding is the obviously the much easier way to go for them.
You mean versus like kind of self-publishing,
Yeah, yeah, your
or
own, yeah, putting out your own stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
what would I prefer, or just
Yeah, I mean, like, just, I suppose, like, maybe what your preferences are. And like I said, a lot of creators watch the show. So, maybe if there were anything that you did that you liked about independent publication that you don't like about crowdsourcing, or vice versa, I'm just curious how the two things juxtapose with each other. Because a lot of people that are coming into the independent circuit now only go the crowdsourcing way. They
yeah.
never put out their own book. And you're one of the guys that I know that has and did, obviously, for a few years building up to your initial success. And I was just curious how those two things compared and what you preferred.
I mean, there was positives and negatives to the crowdfunding thing. I mean, overall it was a positive thing, but if I ever do it again, I think, and this is nothing against those guys. Like it was overall, it was positive, but they offer a something that Kickstarter doesn't, which is for a percentage of whatever gets made. And again, I chose this, but I didn't know what would have been better or not. For a percentage, they offered to print the book for you and fulfill all the orders. But some of what I didn't like, and if they hear this, we could talk about it, or maybe not. I don't know. I'm
If
just going to be
you're
honest.
I was gonna say, if you're comfortable going into it, I am as well. I have a good relationship with Zoop. I appreciate their platform, but that does not mean that there are things that they don't need to be work on or that don't need to be discussed. So whatever you feel comfortable with.
If and when I do another one, I would just do it myself rather than do that thing where they do other stuff for you. I have my own reasons for that, but I would strongly recommend that to anyone else who's looking into doing that. You're already doing a lot, so doing that little bit more. I mean, it's not a little bit more, but it plus, for one, a lot of people didn't know that they thought I was doing anything and everything anyway. So any mistake that was made, or any, I got all the blame. So that's my name being attacked, or my name being, they're gonna, or if they didn't get a quick response from Zoop, they'd come to me. Hey, can you help me with this? So now I'm doing it anyway. So yeah, and there's other reasons, but again, I'd work with them again. It just, I would, if I'm going to do that again, I'd rather, plus you have full control, whereas in that way you don't. And if you do it yourself, you can control the speed at which certain parts of the process are done. So let's say let's say your campaign offers commissions. Well, those commissions, for me at least, they're going to take a long time. I don't want all the people who didn't get a commission to wait those months for those commissions to get done for their order. I would have just, so yeah, I think you get what I'm saying.
Just a difference in handling things, and
Yeah.
I think you spoke to that very diplomatically. I don't think you said anything negative about Zoop. I think that I would go on record as saying Zoop contacted me when they were starting, and I had a lot of the same concerns that you did. I was like, let's talk once you get some product out, and they've gotten some amazing product out. And there were things that I was curious about going in with Zoop because they have never, to my knowledge, like screwed anybody over on stuff and not sent out product. but I've heard complaints about time fulfillment and maybe it being best to handle things on your own, which is why I asked about your experience with independent publications. And it sounds like you're one of those people that learned enough and are responsible and intelligent enough that you know how you would rather handle your own campaign going in next time.
I would say that too. I forgot. I didn't. I'm just thinking my own experience, but if you're not someone who's like a go-getter or you're on the ball and you're concerned about what the people who support you are thinking, or that it's eating away at me every second that they don't have the order. So for me, I'd be on top of it. But if you're not that person, then this doesn't apply to you. This doesn't apply to you. If you're just, like, hey, they're handling it, cool. They'll only take a percentage and they'll get it when they get it, I guess. Then this doesn't apply to you. But for me, and again, I don't want to. I'm not trying to. I if you've listened to previous parts of this interview, you've probably heard how I have these ridiculous standards, but I've set them for me, myself, and I, no one else. So most people are not going to even come close to that.
So it feels like you learned a shit ton from independent publishing, putting out your own books. You've done a crowdsourcing campaign. You're writing for someone else, which is absolutely incredible. I'm super excited to see you expanding your boundaries. Um, do you have anything else on like the horizon that you'd like to talk about? Anything that you'd like to plug? I know Faceless comes out again. Everybody, Faceless comes out through Oni. It's a limited series. Comes out beginning of November through them. So make sure you guys check that out. And do you have anything else out in print? Anything like a shop or anything that I can plug? Stuff you can sell people?
My website, you can buy signed copies of The Freak, Static, and Crimson Flower. MattDrawsEverything.com.
Link will be in the description down below for everybody wondering.
And um, if you're interested in a commission or original art, my art rep, Inky Knuckles, um, you can go to their website. I think it's inkyknuckles.com. Um, yeah, those are really the two shops or things of that nature that if you're interested, you can check those out. And yeah, the new book, like, please, a lot has gone into this. If you haven't supported the Zoop, this is your chance to. It's a 48 page black and white first issue, November 1st. I don't know when you're seeing this, but if you're seeing this before that, it's too late to pre-order that first issue. But also there will be a trade collecting
Oh,
the full thing.
Oni's good about reorders too. They usually overprint a little. So if your LCS didn't get one in, make sure you guys do ask because they probably can get one from Oni. As far as I know, it's not sold out, so you guys probably
Okay,
still can get one in. Just
nice.
just say.
But yeah, the main thing is just that Faceless in the family. Like, if you want to check anything out, try that one. Try that one. That's the one, definitely, because it's also gonna help me keep going that direction. Like, if it's somewhat of a success, that's a sign. Okay, yes, for sure, keep going this way. Otherwise, you don't see weird stuff of this type out there much. That's, black and white, and
It's
it's
it's it's outsider. It's outlaw at its core. Like I mean, that's one of the things that's the greatest about your art is it's totally uncompromising. I mean, anybody who's wandering into a shop on November 1st that's flipping through a copy of that, I don't know how you're not going to pick it up because you're not going to see anything else that looks like that. If only for the art, I would have to take that book home. Original art through Inky Knuckles. You guys can check out the link to his page down in the description below. He's got several books out. Obviously, you want to pick up Faceless in the Family. That's the newest thing. It was previously only available through the Zoop campaign, and that graphic novel was out of print. So this is going to be the only way you're going to be able to snag Faceless in the Family until they do the new trade paperback through Oni. But that's going to be months. It's going to be months before they comp that. You do not want to do that. You don't want to wait. You don't want to wait. You want your fix now. You want it now, man. I'm telling you. I'm telling you. But seriously, get onto his site, check out some of his releases, guys. You know me, I don't like super heavily vouch for a lot of people on the channel. I'm telling you, you want to check out Matt's stuff. And while you're at it, I do also highly recommend, if he's got any copies of his commission books left, dude, drawings blew my mind. And if he doesn't have them on, are they gone? Are they all sold out?
Yeah.
Oh, I got so lucky.
Hoping to do a third volume though.
Oh, you better be.
For all the newest stuff.
Oh god damn.
I don't know when, but eventually.
Oh,
keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, so keep an eye out. Sorry guys, you missed it. I already tried to warn you. Pick up the commissions book. I warned you 2 months ago. Search eBay. Hit up your local comic shops. Bother people on the internet. Where's the Matt Lesniewski? I need my sketchbooks. Come on, I need it. Because you do. You want that shit in your life. But keep an eye out for Volume 3. Pick out his book. Pick up all of his old stuff directly from him. I guarantee you, you guys are just gonna be blown away. I cannot wait for Faceless and the Family to come out. And thanks so much for being on the channel and let me just chew your ear off tonight, man. It has been a real pleasure getting inside your head and learning more about your process. I love your stuff, and I'm so excited to see where you go from here, brother.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on, taking the time. I know you had kind of a hectic day, but
hey, she only fell. She didn't split her skull open, so we're good.
Gotta look at the bright side.
Right? All right, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in. And as always, I ask only 2 things. Keep hitting those local shops and keep supporting independent creators. If you did enjoy what you saw, make sure you hit that like button. Think about getting in the comment section below and letting me know if you really enjoyed what you saw. Make sure you Hulk smash that subscribe button. If you do that, make sure you ding the little notification bell so you never miss another video or premiere. Again, if you feel like you're in a position to help the channel grow, think about using the link in the description below to sign up for my Patreon page. For as little as $3 a month, you get access to tons of behind-the-scenes posts, updates, exclusive content like uncut interviews, and you can even get your name in the credits. If you want to support the channel, but Patreon is not your thing, have no fear. You can finally sign up for membership right here on YouTube. Just hit the little join button and make sure to select the tier and the perks that fit you best. If that's not enough, you can also make one-time donations towards specific goals or just tip the channel using the Ko-Fi link in the description below. And you can even pick up your very own JerkComic shirts like the ones you see on the screen now. As always, this video was brought to you by the Jerk Broadcasting Service, as well as generous grants from the Patreon, Ko-Fi, and YouTube members you see on the screen now. I seriously want to thank every single one of you that supports the channel and helps make these videos possible, with a super special thanks to my loyal Wednesday Warriors, Channel 10, Chasen, Clinton Salvini, and Mike Dolan. I really hope the quality and content is getting better, and I can't wait to see where this next year takes us with your continued support. Thank you again for helping this crazy dream of mine become a reality, and for sticking with me. I hope you all enjoyed, maybe even learned something, and as always, I really, truly, and honestly ask only 2 things. Keep it in those local shops, and keep reading comics.